My name is Houston Heflin, and I'm glad to be here. And didn't know I was going to be first, but happily in this position. So I teach in the department here called Bible Missions and Ministry. My specialization is practical theology, which all theology I guess should be practical, but ministry specifically. And so I want to tell you briefly about something that I do in my classes. One of the things that I've realized in my field, and I guess it's appropriate to talk about the context within which you use mobile devices and mobile learning. In my field, I'm specifically dealing with churches and volunteer teachers in churches, and want to stay connected with those people and want to equip them in their roles, while simultaneously teaching a class called Teaching and Learning for Spiritual Formation. So these students of mine in my classes are going to go out and become pastors, chaplains, missionaries, ministers in churches and in various contexts. And so I see a dual need here. I see a need out in the world among people of faith, and I see a need in my class. And I want to use mobile learning to kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. So what I realize is that people out in the field, these volunteer teachers, many of them do not have experience with training and education. And so what I thought I would do is, next slide, create a podcast on iTunes. Free podcast on iTunes called The Weekend Teacher. And these are brief 5 to 7 minute audio clips of me talking about the strategies, creative teaching strategies, methodology, equipping people to be better teachers so that they have more engaging classes and more attentive students would be good as well. And so I want to equip volunteer teachers out in the world. And I realized that my own students in my class need this information as well, need this content. And so what I'm doing is in my class, I have assigned them, first of all, to listen to some of these in preparation for certain classes that I teach. And they download the podcast, they can listen to it on the way to class, some of them, and in the car, whatever. But specifically, what I want them to do then, and this is an assignment this semester, is they are to create a podcast themselves that is intended to be their own expression of how to train volunteers, because many of them are going to go into that role. And so what I'm having them do is go into the learning studio and record a podcast. And, I've enticed them with the promise that the best of their podcast I would submit on my podcast. One of my students will get to be one of my guest presenters one day to train teachers. So I'm hoping that by them thinking through teaching and learning and trying to communicate in a podcast format what it means to be an effective teacher, they themselves will become better teachers as well.
Okay, next up is Paul Rogendorf, who is an instructor of Spanish here at ACU.
Thank you. If I could, if you don't mind. Let's see. Basically, what I'm going to talk about is an activity that I do in my classes, beginning Spanish, and it's there we go. It's a beginning Spanish class, and what I'm trying to measure is not so much something quantitative as qualitative, just how well can students produce the language. And so we have this activity, or I've devised this activity, and this is the very first one in the semester. This is after only 4 weeks of beginning Spanish. And the idea is they have to be able to present a video in where they present themselves. And so I give them these 3 slides of instruction where, if I can figure out how to advance, here we go. I give them these 3 slides of instructions where I give them detailed instructions on how they are to create the content and also how they are to put this content up on YouTube. And so they give them also tips on how to record. These are instructions on how to upload to YouTube from an iPhone. And since that's what I can assume all my students have is some iOS device, I can give everybody instructions that are rather simple to set that up. Now, what I wind up with then is this very first baseline of students talking in Spanish and I get to see their face, listen to their tone, hear their pronunciation, and I know that it's them because I see their face and their mouth moving. And not their roommate, Pepe Juarez, who did it for them. But at any rate, these are some sample photos. I have a link that I wouldn't mind if I could. No? All right. I was going to show you some production of what they're doing just after 4 weeks. But what I do with this then is I can create two things. First is immediately after they produce it, by having it up on a social site like YouTube, we can comment on each other's work immediately. Students can say, yeah, you did great here, or, well, maybe when you're holding the camera, don't shake it as much, or watch the pronunciation of this word, you know, it's perro, not pero, or perro, or something like that. And they can critique each other on various aspects, and then the next one will be better. Well, that's where the right-hand side of this diagram comes into effect. It's the learning portfolio. We can then archive these things in learning portfolios, and rather than have some abstract test numbers to try to gauge what their progress is, not just throughout the semester, but throughout multiple semesters, we have these archive of videos where we can see these little snippets of time of just how they did back then and how they've improved later on. So the mobile technology, what it does for me is it makes this process of archiving qualitative data much, much easier.
Hi, I'm Mike Wiggins. I'm the chair of the Art and Design Department. So I'm going to just talk about two different projects, two different things that we do in the art department that express some core concepts that I think that we're working with. One of the core concepts is connecting within, this idea of collaboration within the learning environment, and then the other one, connecting outside, connecting inside and connecting outside. So the connecting outside is just about collaborating or expanding the learning environment to the outside. And so first, on connecting within, I wanted to just mention a project that Kenny Jones is working on in two-dimensional design. So two-dimensional design is one of the first art classes any major will take. And often it's first semester freshman year. So it's the first art class a student will have when they come on campus. And what he is doing is this animation project where he breaks them up into groups and they storyboard out a simple animation that they're going to create in these small groups. But one of the things that's going to happen is this animation will become one full animation from all of the groups in the course. So as they start storyboarding, they have to think about compositionally how does theirs transition into the next one, but they have to do that at an early stage so that the other group that's next to them can figure out how they're going to transition into one after the group after them. And so it's this kind of integrated collaborative small group working in with an integrated collaborative large group. And so they work out these storyboards. And so with simple products like Flipbook, they wind up taking photographs with their iPhones, putting together this animation really simply. Then the professor can take all of them and put them together as one large animation. And so it forces them to do a lot of really kind of good collaborative exercises, figuring out how they're going to work together. And it also solidifies teams within that class so that as they work through the semester, they're much more open with sharing and critiquing each other's work because they've had kind of a bonding experience with this. Second project, the idea of connecting without. This is something I'm just piloting and thinking about this semester. I'm calling it the 3-minute crit, and this is the idea of trying to connect people with the outside. This is a class blog for a typography class, and so this is something that all the students contribute to and comment on. But one of the things I have them do when they're working on a project is as they get 3/4 of the way through, we can go outside. A lot of these are hand-done projects. Go outside, they can photograph their work and email it to the blog. Takes them 5 minutes. And just this, a year ago or 2 years ago would have been extremely hard. But in 2 minutes, they take a photograph of it, email it to the blog, and here I have a category that just fills up with all their work. Then I can send that link, and I've created this little post that sits at the top. I can send this link to one of our alumni that's working at a great design firm in New York City, some person that the students are aspiring to be, right? And he can get to this post and read it, see the instructions, click there at the bottom, and my phone essentially calls his phone, gives him some verbal instructions, and he can flip through and look at all the work and leave a voicemail critiquing the student's work. Real simple, takes him 3 minutes to do this. Not a huge commitment on his part, but the students get feedback from some outside person in a real easy format. So that's one of the ways we're trying to bring outside people in. Just one of the concepts that I think that makes a lot of this possible is this lack of friction that this technology brings. And so one of the concepts I hope we discuss is the idea of technology not being the focus. Because obviously when we all get together, technology becomes the focus. All these art teachers don't want technology to be the focus. They want the content and the concepts to be the focus. And I think a lot of what this technology does is allow the technology to hopefully be in the back seat rather than the front seat. So who's next?
Since I had the opportunity to kind of talk last night about what I'm doing, I'm going to try not to beat a dead horse too much and repeat myself. But when I'm looking at really teaching outside of the classroom, and I'm really interested and invested in the concept of what I'd call remote teaching and trying the best I can to kind of knock the walls out of the classroom, there's several implications that has on me as the teacher. For one, it's really scary because if I'm dedicated to this concept, I have to always ask myself at the beginning of every class, whatever concept I'm trying to teach, is the classroom, or I try to think of what is the absolute best way that I can get my students to understand this concept. And the scary thing is classroom is hardly ever the number one way I can get my classes to learn what I want them to learn. And so that's kind of scary for me. One of the things that I think a lot of people will think initially if they hear, you can teach anywhere. You don't have to be in the classroom to teach. You can teach from a hotel room in California. I can teach from my dining room table. It's just it sounds like, well, you're just trying to get out of going to class. You're trying to get out of going and teaching in front of the classroom. When in reality, doing this takes about 2 to 3 times the work as getting up and doing a lecture, because you have to prepare for it. You have to think exactly how am I going to achieve the outcomes that I want to achieve in my course. And so it takes a lot more work, and you really have to be invested in doing this. But I think once you've done that and once you put the legwork in, it's really beneficial. Some examples of some of the things that I've done outside of what I talked about last night is I teach a course in the spring called Social Work Practice with Macro Systems. And basically that's just community understanding, working with communities, working with groups, organizations. And one of the first things that we talk about is group dynamics. Kind of group dynamics 101. Well, what good is it going to do for me to get a bunch of people in the classroom and stand up and talk about the dynamics of a group? No, I want to put them in groups and let them experience group dynamics. And so we have this platform that I've used here and there called Heads Up, and originally it was designed to put people into groups in class, to kind of take away the professor bias of putting people in different groups. But I've hardly ever used it in class. I've used it as a tool outside of class to communicate with my class when we're not face-to-face. And so one of the things I've done that's a lot of fun is I tell them, okay, at 1 o'clock when class starts, get out your mobile device, log on to Heads Up, and you just wait for something to happen. And so they'll get assigned a group, and I'll tell them a place to go on campus. And I'll tell them to check every 20 minutes, and I'll put them in another group. And they go to that group. So let's say 10 of them will go to the campus center, and I'll give them some mundane task, like go to the campus store and find the cheapest, most well-made shirt. I mean, something that I really don't care what they do. But I'll give each of them a specific role. I'll say to this person, you are going to be the person in the group that tries to derail the group the most. Try to do everything you can to keep them from accomplishing their goal. And so I'll give them all these different roles, and so it's just chaos. And then after 20 minutes, I'll say, okay, now you go to the gym, you go to this place, and they'll all go to different groups. Never see me face to face. and they're just relying on their mobile device to tell them where to go on campus, but they're experiencing group dynamics the whole time they're doing this over and over again. And then whenever we come back together, I can say, okay, let's debrief about this. So it's not like we're going over it in class and then I'm giving them activity to do. I'm introducing them to the course concept. Well, I'm not doing anything. They're introducing themselves to the course content by experiencing it in real life situations, which they probably couldn't do in the confines of a classroom. Something else that I found that's really beneficial is the concept George was talking about last night, is anywhere, everywhere. When you are connected, theoretically you are always in class. So I'll give them assignments that they're supposed to do over the course of the semester just in their everyday life. In that communities class, we talk a lot about things in communities that work against certain populations. And so at the end of the semester, I say, you know, I want you to work on this portfolio all semester of things you've documented in each community that work for certain populations and against certain populations. And one girl, a week after we talked about it, she went to the public library and she saw that the handicap ramp for wheelchairs is 20 yards away from the nearest handicap space, which, you know, we never really would have looked at. And so she filmed it. She filmed herself walking and said, this is not logical. And she put that in her portfolio. And so it wasn't during class. It was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday that she saw that. But because she had the mobile device with her, even unintentionally she wasn't intentional in looking for these things. It's just something that she noticed based on what we'd done in class. Also, some things that we talk about is the ability, just with your mobile devices, to do things like Skype and Google Chat and all these other things. You know, I go to these big social work conferences, and so what I'm going to do this year is I'm not going to dismiss my class. I'm going to have them come sit in class, and I'm just going to carry my phone around, videoing and relaying back what I'm doing and talking to different social workers and getting their different opinions. Because, I mean, in what hour and a half period are my classes going to get to hear from 10 different social workers from 10 different states, 2 or 3 different countries, things like that? That's far above and beyond anything that I'm going to be able to present to them. So, you know, just the challenge to me is the sheer not thinking inside of the box with this, not limiting myself. I mean, when you have, it sounds cliche, but when you have the whole world just based on your mobile device, why limit yourself to the things that you can do? And so, you know, one of my challenges is if I find something that's really cool and that works, I'm tempted to use it again and again and again, even if it might not be the most effective way. So it's a lot of trial and error, but from what I found, the classes are really engaged, even in the errors, when they kind of get to play around and find out what works best and what might not work best. It's all a learning experience, and so I find that's really beneficial in my classes. So.
My name is Billy McConnell, and I'm in the teacher education program. And we have multiple things that we do, and I have just kind of a snippet of a video I'd like for you to hear from the people that we work with rather than from me. We had the privilege this past spring of being chosen by the Texas Education Agency as being the model teacher preparation program in the state of Texas for integrating technology. And so they came and did a documentary on us. And we also received a grant as part of the AT&T grant to create a professional development organization. And so this summer, I led our K-12 Digital Learning Institute, where we brought in-service teachers from the outside to learn how to integrate technology. And our focus, I hope as you see, as you hear from others, as Mike was talking about in the art classes, our focus is not technology. Our focus is on learning. And how do we redesign the classroom for learning for today? And technology is the support. So let's see if this will work.
Teaching has always been a challenge, but the new model of being a guide to knowledge rather than the source of knowledge creates new challenges.
It's a little bit of a daunting task for a teacher to think about what do I need to teach them? I'm no longer the expert. What I'm teaching them is going to be obsolete by the time they get out of my classroom. So it's the 21st century skills that are important, teaching those students to really think critically, to be able to problem solve, to be creative, to be innovative.
In curriculum and development classes at Abilene Christian University, teacher candidates learn how to incorporate media into lesson plans that build those 21st century skills.
they not only have to identify the TEKS that their lesson's going to address, but they also have to address the nets that it's going to address. And then we have another evaluation tool called HEAT, which stands for Harder Thinking, Engagement, Authenticity, and Technology. And each of those is a different category, and the higher up it goes, the more they're doing harder thinking. The higher up it goes, the more authentic the lesson is and is relevant to the student.
The students in this class are fellow teacher candidates who put each lesson plan to the test and offer a critique when it's complete.
What if we, and you don't have to start an evaluation all the time, let's just say application, or let's say evaluation.
You know, I came here thinking it was going to be all about how to use the iPad, what about this app, and it's not. It's really about learning, how kids learn, and how we can use the technology to help us.
There's so many things that we're learning about where the students are tasked with learning themselves rather than us spoon-feeding the instruction to them.
What I just heard from Dr. McConnell, you start them out at a higher level thinking and let them come up with the knowledge on their own, and they learn to really think on their own.
The classroom is going to be so much richer. And beyond that, what we're learning about just how to do a project and how to manage a project, that's what I've been trying to do for 3 years, and now I think I know a little bit more about how to do it.
I want to start with the first one and then move on to the second one.
At Abilene Christian University, educators believe that motivated and capable undergraduate teacher candidates should be involved in research. Working under the guidance of an advisor, teacher candidate Stacy McConnell created a research project to study the impact of mobile technology on the development of 21st century skills in a physics class. The project resulted in some interesting findings.
I've seen major growths in all areas from the beginning of the project to the end of the project.
Providing iPads to students proved to be valuable in a variety of ways, beginning with creating a concept map.
And it helps them organize their thoughts, move sequentially from one part into the next part, and make connections between different topics that they need to cover.
And the magnetic properties of the rocket. If the rocket is moving in the direction of magnetic fields of a planet or anything else, it'll speed up. But if it's moving against the magnetic field, it'll slow down.
Students have been very creative, and they've been able to take the ideas they find researching and be able to compile them to create a new product. They also had a lot of success with communication and collaboration with the iPads.
These capabilities are particularly important when working collaboratively on a project-based learning assignment. Observing international students using the iPads revealed yet another benefit of technology in a 21st century classroom.
I wasn't expecting to have 3 international students in my class, and so seeing how they have grown and matured and been able to express their ideas more fluidly in English by having the translated Chinese or Korean version on their iPads has been an unforeseen but very beneficial result of having mobile technology.
As a foreigner, sometimes teacher speak too quickly. I cannot follow him. So I can use the iPad in Chinese to search in the internet so I can follow them. So it's very useful for me.
Her students really have grown in their ability to think and be creative and to collaborate.
I think technology is absolutely imperative for a project-based format. With the experiences that I've had, it's really almost impossible to be able to study everything that the students need to study from a textbook or from a variety of textbooks. They have to have access to the active and growing community of information, but not having the technology would limit them to only what I know.
Okay, this is the question and answer part. You've heard from the people on the panel, and I'm opening up for questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thank you all for your presentations. I'm a little concerned about just thinking through particularly faculty members who are newly minted in their graduate programs, maybe perhaps in the humanistic disciplines. In those programs, you're not really being trained in this sort of newfangled, non-traditional technological age. You're still dealing with books. You're still dealing with professors who are, if you will, from the old school. And it seems like the dynamic that's happening here at ACU, you have this teaching and learning center, and you're just going in there, and as I hear you say, you know, we're informal. I'm just concerned about, when talking with faculty members about what may be perceived about the lack of rigor in the way in which you guys are acquiring this information, the ability to do the technology, trial and error, sitting around conversation, perhaps even having some time to just surf the web for all the ways you can use this technology. How do you answer a faculty member that might say, well, where's the manual for doing this? Who is the chief academic officer, if you will, or the department chair over teaching faculty members how to do this? Teaching and Learning Center, perhaps, but where do they get their knowledge from? Is it something that someone just needs to be kind of skilled? You get a young professor who's kind of skilled at technology, hip with it, and he's the one that champions it. But where do we go to for those traditionalists who like to have someone in front of them saying, this is how you do it, this is why you should do it, etc. So I'm just trying to really deal with traditionalists and trying to, how to share this sort of newfangled view of how to treat particularly humanistic disciplines in the academy.
Who's grabbing that one?
I think I talked about a little bit about how when I'm going to try to present some of this work at conferences, I've run into a little bit of resistance for some of those same comments about, you know, this is all great, but we can't afford to give all of our students iPhones, is one of the comments I got. And then just, where's the rigor in the research? And, you know, this all sounds great, but, you know, it's just you playing with technology. And so that's really kind of forced me into doing some more rigorous research. You know, so that's one step that I take is doing some outcome research. We've done a lot of research on student perception. You know, students like it. We know that. But now I've done some research, and we've done a lot of research on ubiquity. And guess what? It doesn't matter if you don't have complete ubiquity. But now we're starting to get into more of the, I hate to use the words academic, because, you know, whether someone gets an A or a B in a class isn't something that technology is really going to impact. But looking at, does technology help students gain knowledge of a specific concept the same as, or even more so than, traditional methods? And then, does technology work towards achieving identified course outcomes? So that's something that we're looking at right now from an empirical perspective. But then as far as the ACU campus goes, you know, by no means are 100% of faculty doing this all the time in every class. So, you know, new faculty come on a lot. They're not used to this. So something that the university is really good at bringing about is working collaboratively, that word, with each other. And really helping each other learn from one another. And so the Adams Center is really good about, if you've done some research, or if you have something that you'd like to share, getting everyone together who wants to hear about it. And then, you know, in my department, you know, we always encourage one another to sit in our classes, see how each other teach, see what works, and try to incorporate that into our own classes. And so it's just kind of something that's a lot, I mean, still very grassroots, but still where we have to work with one another, help each other understand what we're doing, see what works. If something really does not work for me, I will let everyone else know, don't try this, because it doesn't work. And so that's kind of where we are right now, is building that bridge from theoretical to empirical, and then just really working in collaboration with one another.
I want to answer part of your question in one specific way. Also, to say that, yes, it is intimidating for some teachers who may not want to experiment and fail. There is something I tried in one of my classes, but I selected a group of seniors that I knew rather well, and it was a smaller class, and kind of asked for their permission to participate and give this a try. And one day something failed, and another day something worked. But I think the just experiment, experimenting is one of the things. Having the courage. We became teachers because we enjoyed learning, and trying and experimenting. And so I would say that if we don't lose that that virtue of trying something out, something as simple as okay, I have a poll on a blog, and get out your mobile device and go to the site and answer the poll, and then we see the results. Is something simple that can be done. And I guess I would say try new technology to the extent that you're willing to fail in class and learn. Something as simple I did this morning in one of my classes, Text Free is an app you can download. It is free. As you can receive text messages to a phone number that's not your own. So I post that on the screen on a keynote presentation and have the students answer a question. What are the 3 most important qualities of an effective teacher? It's the question I asked. And so I receive all of their feedback about what are the qualities of an effective teacher, and I have these in the text message format. And then later on in the presentation, after showing them some things, I reveal to them by reading their responses to them. That was using technology. The emphasis isn't the technology, but it got a lot of information rather quickly that I could use.
Just briefly, in the teacher education department, we're concerned about our own students learning, but more importantly, that we're about to send them out to be teachers. And so in our department, we have a wide range of professors at every level. They all do carry an iPad because we gave it to them. How much they use it, I can't always tell you. But there's a sense in our department that because we are teachers and we're preparing teachers, that we are always going to be learners, and that's what we try to teach our teachers, that you're constantly learning, we're constantly sharing, we take people where they are, and we believe we've got to get out. So our teachers get out into conferences a lot, both presenting and going. We do a lot of reading, a lot of research. Research tells us right now in the K through 12 world that when technology is used for higher order thinking, academic achievement goes up. When technology is used for lower order thinking, that academic achievement stays the same or actually goes down. Now, what we'll tell you is, I would love to tell you as an educational technologist that technology did it.